Hi, I'm Ed Griffin, and I'd like to tell you about my experience with something called seed source nutrition. The story begins about 4 months ago. I came down with a world-class case of shingles. Yeah, shingles. If you've ever had it, you know what I'm talking about. If you know anybody who's had it, I'm sure they've told you. It's very painful. It's something you don't want. Well, I got it. And naturally, when you get something like that, you start reading up about it, try to get some information, and what I found was not very encouraging. I found that the average case of shingles, which is a return of a virus that children normally get, they call it chickenpox. It comes back in adult period of life, and they call it shingles because it attacks the waistline or the chest or something like that. It's very painful. So I read about this, and I found out that the average case of shingles in adults is about 3 weeks to 5 weeks. It goes away on its own, pretty much whether you treat it or not. That was okay. I thought, well, 3 weeks, I can handle that. But the problem is, by the time I was reading that, I was already into the 5th week. And I had tried just about everything, nutrition, ointments, all kinds of things. I even took an intensive course of vitamin C IV drip. I took 5 dives in one of those chambers, hyperbaric chamber. I did all of these things and took a lot of time, had good medical advice. Nothing seemed to really touch it. And here I was in the 5th and 6th week now coming up, and I was reading more, and I found out that by the time you reach 6 or 7 weeks and you still have it, the chances are pretty good that you're going to have it for the rest of your life. I hit the 8th week and the 9th week and then the 10th week, and I still had it. So I was in a pretty bad state of mind. And then the funniest thing happened. I got a call. My assistant Joan came in and she said, Mr. G, there's a Dr. Weeks on the telephone. Do you want to talk to him? I said, well, who's Dr. Weeks? She said, I don't know. I didn't know either, so I answered the phone. Very pleasant voice on the other end said, hi, I'm Dr. Weeks. I live up in Washington State, and I hear you have shingles. It blew me over because I thought, what's going on? Is this on the internet or CNN or something? And it turned out that there was a mutual friend that he found this out from, so it wasn't no mystery at all, but I found that humorous. But he said, yeah, I hear you have shingles, and he said, I've had a lot of experience with that. And he said, I have something that I'd like to send you if you'll accept it, and if you'll try it, you may have a big surprise that it'll work. I said, well, sure, I'd be grateful for that. So I waited for the package, but before that I had asked him, I said, what is this stuff? And he said, well, in a word, it's called seed source nutrition. And he explained very briefly that what they do is they take up seeds, some certain seeds, the black cumin seed, the black raspberry seed, and the Chardonnay grape seed. They grind it up very finely, and they squeeze the oils out of it and get the nutrition out of it, and that's it, nothing more or less than that. And I said, well, how can that work? He said, well, it's a very technical thing. Someday I'll explain it to you. He said, but basically it works. He said, it's because of these substances. And by this time I was beginning to get the idea because, you know, back in, it was 1974, I published a book on cancer called World Without Cancer. And by the time I was through with that book, I had come to the realization that health doesn't really come out of a test tube. The substances that the body needs for healthy existence and throwing off disease states comes primarily from nature. I remember coming to that conclusion, and from that time forward I had kind of a dream, a fantasy. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just find one thing that came from nature, or 2 things, like a turnip and an apple or something like that. And if you could just eat these things and you get everything you need from nature, wouldn't that be wonderful? Of course, it's impossible, I thought to myself. It just doesn't happen that way. But one thing I remember is that I looked at my friends, many of my friends had these cabinets full of bottles, full of prescription drugs. 50, 60 bottles of different drugs. Everybody had at least 4 or 5. And I remember saying to myself, not me. Never will I have a cabinet full of all of these prescription drugs and pills and everything. Not me. And then it wasn't very long after that, a couple of years after that, I opened up my cabinet and there they were, 30, 40 bottles of vitamins and minerals and supplements and enzymes and special concoctions from nature. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just like these people, except at least my stuff is coming from nature. I thought, well, I'd like to get all of this down to one or two things, as I said, a turnip or an apple. But it was a fantasy, impossible dream. And the more Dr. Weeks talked to me, and the more I began to wonder, could this be it? He said something very interesting. He said, before this, I used to have my prescription list. He said, 1,000 different drugs I could recommend to people. He said, now I'm down to about 2. I'm kind of a one-pony doctor, is how he phrased it. I thought, this is my kind of doctor. And anyway, to tell this story in a short form, a little shorter than this, this is what I found out that came in that package of seed source nutrition. In 1 or 2 sources, I think I found just about everything we need in nature to restore and maintain health. I realized in the beginning, without much research, that seeds are the source of life. If that's the case, it's not too far-fetched to realize that seeds also can be the source of healing. All of this was flashing through my mind. I hadn't tried this material yet, but it came in the mail, and I started to take it, a little pouch. You squeeze the seed juice and the crushed up husks of the seeds into your mouth, and surprisingly, it tasted pretty good. I'm used to healthy things not tasting very good. This was pretty good. Tasted like jam. You could put it on a piece of toast if you wanted to. Haven't tried this yet, but one of these days I'll put some butter on a piece of toast, put some of this stuff on it. It'll taste just like jam. So I was really anxious to try it. Well, about 2 days later, I thought, oh, this pain in my waist, I think it's a little bit better. Nah, just my imagination. That couldn't work like that. About 2 more days, I thought, well, I think it really is getting better. And blow me down, it took about a week or 10 days, not that there's no doubt about it. At last, something is getting rid of my post-herpetic neuralgia, this pain that's caused by damaged nerves. And that takes a long time to heal because the nerves have actually been damaged, in some cases eaten away by the virus, and they have to regenerate. They have to grow. That's a slow process. And this was already working to the point that I could feel it. Now, I guess it's about 15 weeks from the beginning of this, and I'm happy to report that the pain is just about gone. There's a little bit left, but every day I can see that there's less and less. And I'm happy to say that last week, well, first of all, I should back up. Prior to this, I couldn't even ride in a car. I mean, if I was in a car and it was jiggling on a regular pavement, it was hurting because of the vibration. Couldn't drive over a dime without my wincing. Oh, I can't take this. So, last week, I'm happy to report, I actually drove a car that whole week, that period, about almost 1,000 miles. I drove from Paso Robles to Las Vegas, from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, and all around, and I was able to do it. And so I'm out of the woods now, and I have to say that it has to be seed source nutrition. I can't think of anything else it could be. So that's my story. Thanks for listening to it. I hope that you are willing to consider seed source nutrition. It comes from nature. If you have a condition that just won't go away, and you're tired of taking drugs to just mask the symptoms and not really solve the problem, I'm so impressed. I added it to my product line on the Reality Zone, and I invite you to give it a try. So that's my story. Thanks for listening, and stay healthy.